Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
Welcome back. Today we have a very special guest, Iris Eytan. She is a veteran criminal defense attorney with nearly 30 years of experience representing clients in high-stakes and complex cases, including murder trials. A former deputy state public defender and founding partner of Eytan Nielsen, she has been a leading advocate for a fair and just legal system throughout her career. Iris is the founder and CEO of Protect Ethical Prosecutors, an organization dedicated to addressing prosecutorial misconduct and promoting accountability in the criminal justice system. She has received widespread recognition for her work and has played a significant role in advancing systemic reform at both the state and national levels. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I know it's been a process in terms of getting scheduled and getting you here because I know you were so busy. So we're just super appreciative of your time today. And I also am very proud to have a former PD on come back with a warrant. So, I started at the public defender's office, and that's how Brandon and I got to know each other. He was a prosecutor. And so now we're business partners, and it's a really cool full circle moment. And I'm just excited to have a PD on.
I know. It's like we're our own great group, and I don't want to say tribe, but it really has that. We have that. We have that calling that you really very few lawyers have, and it's such a great job.
Yeah, and it's like you just understand like the trenches that you were kind of in at one point together, which is what Brandon and I kind of talk about too. Like we were just kind of in the trenches together. So. But obviously that's where you started and you're here now. And we've talked about all the great accomplishments you've had. And, we'll talk about how you got to founding Protect Ethical Prosecutors. But in your time as a public defender, was there ever like a moment that you ever, or maybe an experience you had or a case or something with a prosecutor that made you think like about Protect Ethical Prosecutors? Like, was there an experience that happened then that you were like exposed to that made you feel like this is something that is a problem?
So because I was only a public defender for 3 years of the time that I was a criminal defense lawyer, it was earlier in my career. I was practicing civil rights for people with mental health disabilities for the first 5 years of my law practice. And then I became a public defender? The answer is no. I had a few experiences when I was a public defender where I was head scratching, but no, I never had, I had probably the relationship you have with Brandon.
Yeah.
With most of the prosecutors that I was battling against, right? It was just, you'd see them out after your cases were over that day at the docket or trial, and you're having a beer and you might snicker with your public defenders, but then you go over there and you'd say, hey, good trial, or
absolutely.
Right. And
there was always respect
I know that I hear people that are way older than us say back in the day. I hate doing that, but I feel that to be true for how I remember being a public defender, and things changed a lot. The higher stakes cases that I handled.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's kind of concerning to hear. So you feel as maybe you progressed in your career because you were handling more serious cases. You were dealing with people who were more willing to do unethical things in their cases to like really like win. That is so crazy.
That's exactly it. I think, it took me, this is the thing. Brandon, I went to law school with prosecutors that are now prosecutors. And, I remember when I took the oath in California, I took the bar in California first. I remember taking the oath, and I'm standing around colleagues of mine from law school that went into prosecutors' offices. And I always thought of them, we were all the same. We're all following the same laws and the rules. And everyone, that time you take a test, the professional responsibility part of the exam,
of course,
that are testing your ethics. Everyone was on the same page. I always practiced law. And maybe this is naive of me, but I think it's better to be, I had just a general trust that other lawyers that I was studied around, trusted, friends with, and that I was practicing with, we were all playing by the same rules. I never could have imagined, honestly, that a prosecutor would break the rules. After going to law school and learning and being with them and how much power they have, I never thought that they would break that trust. My trust, the trust of the public. As a public defender, you kind of are ingrained with cops suck.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
That's kind of the deal.
Mentality.
I've definitely said that
your case is all about what the cop did or didn't do.
Right.
But it's never about the prosecutor.
No.
So I didn't ever got this training that watch out for a prosecutor who might not be telling you the truth.
Yeah.
It's never something that I never even imagined that. And I know like I said, maybe I'm just this disillusioned human being that just trusts way too much. But that's kind of what happened is that the higher stakes the case became. In fact, the more cameras that were on the case,
oh my God,
where there's more tension, it was the newspaper, it was in 48 hours. The prosecutors, it's like a switch went off and they really wanted to win.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. The ends, justified the means. And after a few big cases, I started to really understand that it was the prosecutors that I should be most scared of in these very high profile cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I know that there was a specific case that you were able to really expose the prosecutor, and ultimately you got, I was talking about this to Brandon before. I'm like, this is like every public defender's dream, like young public defender's dream, at least, that you're getting the elected DA disbarred. Not that I'm saying that that's what my dream is, but I'm just saying, like, you want to fight the system,
not a dream.
right?
It's not a dream. You don't want to be.
You don't want to get
right. You don't want
cause another. Have anything to do with another lawyer losing their license.
No, and I wasn't the cause. She was the cause. She did.
No. Of course.
I probably worded that wrong. I'm just saying that my point is that you really I feel like that says a lot about your advocacy and fighting for systemic change for real. And I think when you go into the public defender's office and when you're trained at the PD's office, and they call this I think true believers, and we've said this before, where you just will fight at all costs. And I don't think there's anything really wrong with that to a certain extent. Sometimes you just need a reality check, and I think that happens with experience on both sides, but ultimately, if you're ethical, that's really what matters, right? At the end of the day, you can make wonky arguments all day, but you need to be ethical and honest. And so I meant that in the best way possible in terms of,
I get it.
Yeah. And so I bring that up because that's the point of, and I think what started Protect Ethical Prosecutors. And so I think the case is People v. Barry Morphew, if I'm saying that correctly. But I know that was something that was a really big deal, obviously, we're talking about that. So if you don't mind maybe sharing about your experience and how that even uncovered to begin with, how did you discover that there was
prosecutorial misconduct
going on here? Yeah.
Okay, so, we could honestly start this conversation and finish tomorrow.
I'm sure with the amount that we can talk, probably.
Right. I mean, you packed a lot in the question.
Yeah.
Right. So, but this is where I'll start here. Barry Morphew's case was the, kind of the cherry on top that, but many cases preceded that gave me the understanding about prosecutorial misconduct. If I hadn't had the 5 or 6 cases, representing an architect who was charged with murdering his fiance and was in jail awaiting charges and trial, while the prosecutor was told by the lead detective and the head of the Denver crime lab that it wasn't a homicide based on the evidence and that it was a suicide, I would not have gone digging and been more skeptical in the Barry Morphew case. And I only found that out because it didn't add up to anybody that was looking at, in the architect's case, anybody who's looking at that is saying, I don't understand all of the forensic evidence that, your viewers, you both know, but, your viewers, you watch CSI probably, which is why they're watching this.
Yeah.
Other than you're both are probably really entertaining. But you have, the gunshot residue pointed away from him being a shooter, right?
Oh, yeah.
The DNA on the gun, not his DNA on the gun, her DNA on the gun. The blood spatter, that should have been if he shot her at close range.
So what was the state proceeding on then?
How the gunshot one was on her head. He would have had to have this misting blood, right? Blood spatter on him. I mean, he had to have been wearing like saran wrap or like a body condom in order to have avoided.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The physical evidence was pretty
all
clear.
Of these, like, just simple facts that, anybody, who's been a criminal defense lawyer for 1 year would look at going, wait a minute. And by the way, it wasn't just me. It was a lead detective and the head of the crime lab. So I kept asking for more information. Like, are you sure there's not, asking the DA, are you sure I have everything? Are you sure there's nothing in your file that I don't have? Nope, you have everything. Ask the judge, this seems really strange. It seems things are missing. I know that he's probably had conversations with these people, these experts, and something doesn't add up. Nope, Miss Eytan has everything. I am upset about the accusation. Judge, this is offensive. If she's going to make a claim that I'm unethical, then she can go to the bar and make that there, but not here, Judge. I'm not. Well, so keep digging. And then I had to start, subpoenaing records, which in a criminal case, you both know, the prosecutor has the obligation to turn over mandatory evidence, including police reports, and most importantly, favorable evidence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know who would dispute that those opinions were favorable. Okay. Right. But this guy did. This DA said, no, that's not fair. Those were personal opinions of those people. Like they're at a bar talking about OJ and whether he did it or not. And the judge didn't buy that. These are expert opinions in your case they gave you, one in writing and one on the telephone. And that the testimony and the documents came forward after I was digging. And what the judge did in the end was say, bad prosecutor, and, slap you on the wrist. I'm going to write, an order saying how bad this was that you did this, but I'm not going to, the judge's like, I don't want to get involved in doing anything more. Thankfully my client was acquitted. Nothing happened to that prosecutor at all. His boss told me at that time, his boss was a different elected DA. And I went to her and showed her the court order and the transcripts and what this prosecutor said. And the elected prosecutor said to me in Denver, like, a metropolitan area, said, well, he gets a lot of convictions.
Oh.
And so I just said, you know what? You should be worried about those convictions. Yeah. Because, and you know what? That was in 2021. Okay. This is when this March of mine, I'm starting to think about what's going on. 2021. And this same prosecutor in this last year, in 2025, has had 3 cases dismissed by judges because he's hiding favorable evidence. And the new elected prosecutor will not fire him, and he has not been disciplined by the bar, and he still is a chief in the office handling a full felony caseload. And by the way, those 3 cases in 25, that's not all of them. He has many more between the time that he was ordered by my judge and this one. So I'm saying that was a morsel, that was a viewpoint into how I started looking at cases. And I look back at the case I had before him, a sheriff's commander, main investigator for a sheriff, elected sheriff. He was like kind of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th in command-ish, right? The sheriff's office in El Paso County. He was accused of arresting somebody falsely, a deputy, like because it was this political thing that this sheriff's deputy was arrested a year after the fact for driving under the influence because she was married to somebody that had a political agenda against the sheriff. Okay, so there was a claim that the sheriff and my client falsely arrested her, not for a DUI, but for some random reason. And come to find out that the reason why they actually indicted my client, who had a great career and was a longtime investigator and trusted and did investigations on John Bonet, like a very high level investigator. And they indicted him when he refused to testify against the sheriff for other fraud that they wanted to go after the sheriff for. And so the DAs decided to indict my client to kind of force him to talk. And he refused. He's like, I'm not going to lie and say that I was part of any arrest. I wasn't. I didn't know anything about it. And they instead decided to charge him with the arrest. They had evidence he wasn't even near the arrest, didn't have anything to do with the arrest, wasn't on the phone about any arrest, wasn't in the room when the arrest happened, wasn't even in the building when the arrest happened, had nothing to do with the arrest. And they had the evidence at the time they went to the grand jury, and they didn't tell the grand jury. And so this guy sat for a year and a half with me representing him, saying, why aren't you dismissing this case? Now I found out the evidence, by the way, because I had to ask for different things. I started finding out how to ask for information that wasn't given to me. That case was dismissed. That guy's life was ruined. All right. So one after another of these things. So then I get to Barry Morphew. And by the way, when, Barry, I was retained on his case, I didn't want to take it because I had now been through the washing machine cycle of more than just the 2 I explained. 2 other high profile cases, right? One was a case that still plays on 48 Hours, Tom Fallis, who the show still plays 2-3 times a year, making it look like he's guilty.
Oh my God.
It was a murder case. He was acquitted in the matter of 3 hours, a 3-week trial with a absolute blessing by the jury. This never should have happened. Okay. Where I found an email, I had to publicly do a public records request in a criminal case. It's insane. And I got an email that this now elected DA wrote to the Attorney General's office before the case he was indicted, saying, if the family of the deceased comes to you saying that we're not charging Tom Fallis, we're not doing it because there's no probable cause to charge him. We've done a full investigation. Okay. This did not a murder. And instead the family went to Fox News, pressured this DA after he wrote that email, and they indicted Tom Fallis with murder. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. that guy still, if you watch the show, don't watch it. It's all false.
Right.
If you watch the show, you watch it like this guy's guilty.
Yeah.
And you're like, how is this? So by the time I get to Morphew, I say, I'm done. I can't represent another person that's in such a high profile place where there's a consideration they could be innocent. I can't. I am so depleted and disillusioned by how people are treated in the system when and this case was a highest profile case in Colorado, and it still is right now because it's happening again, but we don't need to get into that. But at the time, his wife was missing for a year, and the prosecutor just gets elected. Her name is Linda Stanley. She got elected on a platform basically that she was going to solve cold cases, including Barry Morphew's. And she was at the time campaigning with Lauren Boebert, who is a very, you might know her. She's a Congress person, the United States Congress, and is a live wire. You might remember she's been like seen, maybe like doing sexually untoward things in like a musical theater. She's carried a gun through the Capitol, things like that. She's she's a wild card in our in the United States House.
Gotcha.
Okay. Gotcha. Anyway, so Linda Stanley gets elected after, her campaign where she's holding AR-15s with Lauren Boebert crossing them in front of a United States flag. Oh, okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about. So never had tried even a felony case, this woman. Was a truck driver. I think she failed the bar 6 times. Not that means anything, but okay. I mean, I just feel like that should be something that people should know before they elect you. Let them make the decision. She already had been suspended once because she took off on a client that she was representing in some form. I think it was a money issue. I forget, but she was suspended. So she had a little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
And so she gets elected, and the DA that preceded her had the investigation of the Suzanne Morphew's and didn't act on it. Wasn't moving forward. The case was still being actively investigated, and Linda Stanley was only sworn in office for sworn in January, and on May 8th. Barry was arrested a year after Suzanne went missing, and it was not by indictment; it was by complaint. Right, they wrote an affidavit to arrest Barry. It was the longest tabloid-filled, false-filled affidavit for arrest anyone has ever seen. Tons of typographical, grammatical errors, footnotes, like with ideas, well, if this happened, this must have happened. Like, all the hunches that you would ever have in your life when you're like reading a crime novel are footnoted. It was insane read. Okay. And when you read the affidavit, what you didn't see in there was probable cause. What you didn't see in there was, okay, so Suzanne Morphew went missing, and then Barry Morphew was investigated for it, and they arrested Barry Morphew. That was pretty much it. So but it was 129 pages.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So I read it, and before I decided to take the case, and I was troubled by what I read. And I'm like, oh God, this is such a massive case with so many eyeballs on it. We have a prosecutor who's going to want to win at all costs. It's going to be like Take 5, right? And I have the persistence, and I certainly have the abilities, but I mean, it's a lot, and the prosecutors, they had 7 prosecutors on this case.
Yeah,
they had Colorado Bureau of Investigation backing this. They had the whole sheriff's office, the FBI. they had packed the courtroom with all the officials that had touched this case, and it was huge, it was massive. So, taking this case, I did not take it lightly, but I had a lot of unfortunate experiences with misconduct that caused me to ask the right questions in the beginning, rather than wait till the case was close to trial to go, wait a minute, where's this, where's that? So I asked, I think, the right questions. And after, basically 8 months of asking the right questions, the judge started ordering that they follow the rules. Like, where is all this stuff? And it started coming out that they didn't think that it was that important to tell the judge when Barry was arrested that there was unknown male DNA found all over her house and in her car that was parked in the garage where it was presumed she was kidnapped. Okay? So it was a clear case of who done it. That's the whole case, who done it, right? If Suzanne didn't walk away with the person she had an affair with for 2.5 years that no one knew, not even Barry knew, before she went missing, if it wasn't she walked away to have a life with him, which was shocking in itself because they had 2 kids together that they both dearly loved. But it could have been, no one knows. It could have been a Gone Girl thing. Yeah. She was kidnapped. Or the third category is that Barry did it, right? So 3 options, but one very important option would be alternate suspect. And as we see with Nancy Guthrie, what are they doing? They're trying to get DNA, right? They're trying to find any forensic evidence to find, Nancy Guthrie, to try and tie somebody to that kidnapping, right?
Yeah.
Well, they ignored it here. They didn't tell the judge that they had this DNA.
Yeah, that's huge.
They didn't tell the judge they had CODIS matches, which you guys know, but your public probably doesn't know. It's like there's a database of DNA of people who've been charged with felony sex offense crimes, mostly, that are logged into a system where they can test against the DNA that you find, test against it to see if maybe they might find a match. Well, guess what? They found, a couple partial matches. Yeah, in Arizona.
Wow.
Okay. So, and do they investigate those? No. Do they tell the judge about that? No. Do they tell Barry Morphew's counsel about that? No. So they actually defended themselves 8 months later saying, but why would that be favorable, judge? So this is how they acted. They acted in defiance of the rules and the laws as if they didn't apply to them. The judge say, you need to show the defense such and such information that she's asked for. We're not going to do it. And I was told actually by a prosecutor on the case, you know what? I said, you must have written down your conversation you had with the experts of the DNA that were explaining this to you because you had a meeting with them. I found out about the meeting. You didn't tell me about it, and it's nowhere in your notes, and it's nowhere in the discovery. But thank God the scientists keep notes because I found from their notes that you met with them. And I want to know what you talked to them about. Oh, you know what, Iris? If you don't write it down, it goes poof. Oh, so there's a poof rule now?
Oh my goodness.
You guys can decide what to write down and what not to write down. So these are the kinds of things, they attached a map on the back of the affidavit showing what they believed to be, to the judge, saying, Judge, this is good evidence that what we see is Barry Morphew's phone running around the house, chasing her because he probably gave her a deer tranquilizer. Trust me, all this is like made up. Probably gave her deer tranquilizer, and it's causing her to run around in a frenzy, like she's like in this panic. So he's chasing her around, and look at his phone and having pinpoints on this map. Look at him chasing her around the house. Obviously, he's about to kill her. Okay, Judge, that's what this map represents. They in a straight face signature. Judge, hold Barry Morphew without a bond. Where he murdered his wife, first degree murder. Hold him without a bond. We want him life in prison. Okay, that's what he was doing. Well, what did the prosecutors not tell the judge? Oh, that they made up that map. They created that map. The expert from the FBI emailed them the summer before and said to them, don't trust this GPS data because there's no cell service in that area and it's called static drift. Kind of like if you look up your loved one on your phone, you're trying to find the dot, the dot has only a certain range. You can't do a pinpoint. And it was clear that the pinpoints, when you put them together, that it would have meant that Barry was running approximately 100 miles an hour and through walls chasing his wife to kill her. That's what they represented to the judge. Okay. So this is the stuff that we got 8 months after Barry was jailed. All right. So pending a trial, and the judge had it up to here. Yeah. And he's telling them, do this. So finally, the judge throws out multiple experts because of their misconduct, and the DAs had to dismiss the case. And I was disgusted by what I had seen and what I had experienced and what they did to Barry and what they did to his daughters and how they treated the justice system that's no longer just. And I quit practicing law to change the system.
Wow. So that was the last case you worked on?
That was it.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So I know you were saying like, is it that it wears on you? Like, how does that affect you as counsel? Like after seeing that time and time again, and that being the last case that you experienced where it's just outright ridiculous because we're in a court of law, okay? And everything we do is dictated by the law and the facts of what can be presented based off of legitimate, whether it's a witness, a document that can be, a business record or whatever. We have rules and vehicles that govern what we do. And it's not like a free for all where we can just go in and say, hey, judge, I made this map up and this is what we can hold someone in custody for forever. And so just hearing this, it's getting me a little riled up because I'm like, what the heck? But as somebody that's handling the case, I can't imagine the weight. People ask me often, how do you sleep at night being a criminal defense attorney? And I'm like, the shit that keeps me up at night is this stuff. It's not the things that you would think, right? It's not like the
thing
the
that
heinous
your client
act
allegedly did.
Yeah,
right? That's not what it is.
That's not what's on my mind. So I can only imagine what you experience just as counsel, in a human being experiencing this over and over again, then having this case go down the way it did.
I was depleted, disgusted, emotionally broken. So sad that to see a system that I worked in for 30 years and believed in could be so corrupt and unapologetic. And, I went into a lot to help people. I wanted to help people that had mental illness that were being mistreated by the systems that they were in, whether it would be the mental health hospitals, jails, prisons. That's why I went to law school. That's the only reason why I went. I didn't go to be a trial lawyer. I never took a single trial class. I mean, the first cross-examination I did was in a misdemeanor drug case, right? So I didn't have this whole thing about, I didn't understand. I wasn't trained like that. Yeah, I just wanted to help people. I was very, one-track minded. And so to come to this point in a career that, I was lauded as being a really hardcore criminal defense lawyer. And, this woman means business. But to be doing a job that was more about uncovering the other lawyer's misconduct rather than my client's own conduct, made me sick.
Yeah.
That's sick. And so I when I left, I was in a deep, you probably know this, after any trial, you kind of, no matter what the result is.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
You're exhausted.
You have a serious, cortisol dump,
yeah, you crash,
right?
yeah.
Sure. But it never went away. It didn't go away. And I worked hard at thinking about what to do about those prosecutors and filing a request for investigation, that the bar do something to these prosecutors who committed such misconduct, right? And by the way, it's not easy to do.
No.
It takes time, and a lot of the time you're ignored, and it's not, and you got to hold yourself out there as doing it.
Yeah.
Look, I got a lot of death threats and emails and terrible.
Not to mention
animals left on my front doorstep. It was a wicked result for someone that just was, all I was doing was trying to help people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you were playing an unfair, rigged game. You were not letting, the whole premise of the system is for everyone to get a fair shake. And what you were experiencing was a rigged game. It wasn't, you were not able to get your clients a fair shake. And then you had to spend time focusing on that part when that's really not what the job is. The job is to be able to represent people and do it effectively. I think, as a former ethical prosecutor, I can say, there was a level of responsibility that I felt that I had to do things the right way. And I felt like all of the actions that I was taking could be under review at any given point. At least in Palm Beach County, when I was a prosecutor and when I was being trained, we were always told, every email you send is potentially public record. Everything you do is potentially a public. So make sure the decisions that you're making, first off, are the ethical ones. And, look, you want to fight hard. You want to be tough on certain cases. Fine. But that's not bending the facts. That's not creating the evidence. That's not doing the things that you really hope prosecutors aren't doing, because then they're really just they just care about the stats and they just care about how many convictions they get, or they just care about what that public viewpoint is at the end of the day. And that either way, that's taking away from what the whole point of the job is.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be bringing the justice system and having the justice system confront the people that need to be confronted. But that's what it's about. It's not about your personal, how well you personally do. Prosecutors, we would lose cases, you win cases. Like, it's not a matter of you as the person. It's a matter of this is the set of laws that we as a people are agreeing that we're all supposed to be following. Some people aren't following them allegedly. And if that's the case, then this is the consequences. This is the proof of doing that. But to sit there and then just falsely accuse people.
Yeah.
And it takes away from the credibility of the people that are involved. It takes away from I can totally understand how you could get and feel just jaded by this entire system and just want to turn your back on it, because that's not the point. It's like if you were an athlete in any sport, you get into that sport, you're training so hard to compete in that sport, you do everything by the books, and then somebody else is cheating. And it's like, it's just, that's not the point.
Yeah.
Be competitive, but do it the right way.
Yeah.
And
not to mention, we've talked about this before just with other cases, but what's worse than doing something wrong? When you have power and resources is that's what's worse, is to abuse that,
Yeah.
And so, not to mention that it's very uncomfortable as defense counsel. I've been on that side, not on the level that you've seen, but where I think that, the prosecutor isn't doing what they're supposed to, and I have to file a motion to compel, and I'm telling the judge, the prosecutor, that is so uncomfortable. And whenever I give the state the courtesy, I'm sending them the motion, I'm scheduling this, hey, please, get this over to me, or I don't want to go in front of this judge and throw you under the bus. That's the last thing I want to do, but I have to fight for my client. So it's taking away from our duty and jobs, to really defend and investigate our clients' cases.
Exactly.
And it's draining the system's resources and not just it's just the credibility of the justice system.
Tainting the system.
Exactly.
That's draining it.
That's kind of where the organization, the name and the mission behind it, that's where it came from, is that, we want to protect integrity.
Yes.
Right. And not wins, right? Standards above winning, right? Ethics above winning. And I think, the good, hard prosecutors, especially the leaders are condemning the unethical prosecutors, and they're promoting the ones that are doing the hard job of turning over the evidence, right?
Yeah.
Right.
They're telling their deputies, like they told you, Brandon, they're saying, look, you might lose, but you got to turn it over. And by the way, you might not lose anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Some of these cases that, prosecutors like don't turn evidence over. They say really horrible things in the case, and the case gets overturned by an appellate court. They end up winning anyway. But think about all the trouble and cost and efficiency to the victims, by the way. Forget about our clients, right? Think about the victims, the true victims of crimes, what they go through. I mean, because a prosecutor wants to win so badly, they cheat, and they might have won anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So just do the right thing, and maybe, it's all going to be okay for you. Don't worry. But, ethical prosecutors, I don't think need protection. Yeah. I don't think they need protection.
That makes sense.
But they actually do. That's the thing, is that they do need protection. They're under pressure. They have high caseloads. Mm-hmm. They have political heat, and they have sometimes a culture that rewards convictions, right?
Yeah.
And so protecting them looks like, let's set up a culture that rewards you not when you win. Don't get on the LinkedIn, okay, and say, oh, my deputies all won 5 convictions this month. That's not really sending a message.
Yeah.
That you want them acting with ethics.
Yeah.
So that's
results driven.
Leadership starts with dismissing the weak cases, right? Correcting mistakes, turning over evidence, and accountability that praises doing those things, right?
So true.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I think fairness is the metric when it comes to ethical prosecution. And right now, I mean, when I took this time off, I really spent, I feel like I'm an expert now in this area because I've spent, the last couple of years really digging into the research and the empirical studies about prosecutorial misconduct. We have nearly 4,000 exonerations in this country and probably 100,000 innocent people still in prison. Yeah. Okay. Because we are a terrible country that, imprisons more people that live in Britain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But hold on. So if we're just talking about the 4,000 exonerations, those are people who are lucky to get free lawyers to dig into their cases and get maybe testing for a DNA that costs a lot of money that would somehow prove they were innocent, right? Okay. Very hard part, but it's also a floor, not a ceiling, right? In terms of innocence in our country. But use that as the measurement right now. Of the approximately 4,000, more than a third, okay, about 5% are exonerated because a prosecutor committed misconduct. And the highest form of misconduct is concealing favorable evidence.
Of course.
Okay? Think about how often that must happen. I think that 95% of prosecutors are ethical. I do. I don't think, by the way, I don't think they're bad people. Yeah. I don't have this thing. I don't hate them. I don't want them to die. I have none of that. I think they're good people, probably good husbands, probably good fathers, grandsons, the whole thing.
Thank you very much.
You're not a prosecutor anymore, Brandon.
Anymore. But I like the accolades.
I don't have a thing. People think I have a thing. I don't have a thing. I don't have a thing. What I do have a thing about is people who lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they're willing to win at all costs.
But I prefer not to do that. But so, I think when I look at the research and I see how large of a quantity of people are in prison, and the average number of years spent by these innocent people is 12.4 years in prison for something they didn't do. And what happened to those prosecutors? I'm going to tell you, of those 4,000 prosecutors, maybe there's multiple prosecutors. So I don't know if it's 4,000 different prosecutors, but just say, what happened to those prosecutors with founded misconduct?
Probably nothing.
Less than 2% were either suffered any type of employment discipline or attorney regulation discipline. Okay. None were criminally prosecuted. Zero.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when we, and what's going on? What you say, what's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. There's one accountability measure that doesn't apply to prosecutors, that applies to every other professional and lawyer in the country. It's called immunity. It's called, they are absolutely immune. They cannot be sued. Okay. So federal prosecutors, right now, this is a whole thing, right? That everyone's talking about. They can't be sued. Neither can state prosecutors. They're completely immune. Cops can be sued. Okay. Doctors can be sued. Criminal defense lawyers can be sued. You can be sued, by the way, just sitting there. I don't know for, but someone can sue you for defamation, right? In the act of what you're doing. Okay. Okay. So every builders can be sued. Trade, right. People that are looking over your trades and your business. Everyone can be sued. McDonald's can be sued for a hot McNugget. Right. Pay out $500,000 for landing on a girl's lap.
Yeah.
But a prosecutor who intentionally holds exculpatory, favorable evidence from somebody and sends them to prison for something they didn't do cannot be sued in this country, because 50 years ago to the last month, March, 50 years ago, the United States Supreme Court had a case in front of it where Mr. Imbler, who was sentenced to death row,
oh my gosh,
because LA prosecutor Pachtman withheld evidence of innocence in his case, including the alternate suspect. His conviction was overturned, and he sued after 14 years of being on death row. He got out. He sued the prosecutor. The Supreme Court looked at the case and they said, you know what? There's other measures to hold prosecutors accountable. They can be criminally prosecuted, and they also can lose their license. So we don't need to throw this other measure in the way. Okay. We don't need to have them worried about lawsuits. Okay. Let's have them worried about, prosecuting. Well, 50 years later, we can see the data and their reasoning doesn't match the truth and the data, right? Because 1 out of 16 death penalty reversals is a cause of prosecutorial misconduct, even up until 2025, when Richard Glossip's death penalty conviction was reversed by this Supreme Court. This Supreme Court, P.S., this Supreme Court reversed a death penalty conviction because of one reason: a prosecutor who put a witness on the stand she knew was lying.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
What happened? That guy had 5 final meals. He went to have 5 final McDonald's. Okay? He almost was executed. Almost was executed. This woman, the prosecutor, what's she doing now? She's teaching law students, Connie Smotherman, at Oklahoma Law School, okay, how to practice law.
Oh, Lord.
That's what she's doing. And when the current attorney general of Oklahoma was asked, what are you going to do about this? Are you going to discipline her? Are you going to refer her? He said, after Richard Glossip has spent more than 25 years on death row, he said, it's been too long. Nah, not going to do anything. So this is how we handle prosecutorial misconduct in this country. You know how we handle it? We don't. And one bad apple spoils the bunch. And until we start deselecting those bad apples, are we going to let ethical prosecutors flourish in their offices and actually be the ministers of justice that we've given him the permission and the power to be?
That's amazing.
So that's my call. My call is eliminate immunity. We are doing it right now. There's lots of talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. Get rid of immunity for ICE agents. Get rid of immunity for federal prosecutors. We're hearing that because of Pam Bondi. Yeah. Wait a minute. You hear, how many people do you hear saying no one should be above the law? But you even hear prosecutors in Colorado saying that now. No one should be above the law. And my question to them is, what about you?
Yeah.
You trust juries every day. You trust them to execute people.
Yeah.
You go to juries and you say, this guy is so bad, you need to execute them, but you don't trust the same jury to judge you.
Yeah.
Whether you committed intentional misconduct and ruined someone's life.
Yeah.
Really? All of a sudden the buck stops at your door? No. It should be equal. Everyone should be held to the same standards in this country. And it's time for us to catch up to the modern era and stop running away from all these excuses and denials. Because I'll tell you something, as soon as prosecutors have skin in the game, they will stop this. The ones that don't stop, don't worry.
Yeah.
They will have to pay.
Exactly. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So like with the mission of protect ethical prosecutors, like what is Protect Ethical Prosecutors really doing practically to make changes, and how can we tell people how to support you?
Thank you. We are making changes because other than educating and getting this in the drinking water, because people don't know you can't sue a prosecutor, they're shocked. When I tell them or other people, they're in shock. What? You can't sue a prosecutor? Even when? Yeah, even when. So that's the first thing, is getting the message out. You know, this education campaign is huge. The second thing is, why do we need the education campaign? Because, you know, we've so far, we believe that Colorado is the first place to eliminate prosecutorial immunity, because we've already eliminated immunity for police officers. After George Floyd, we were the first state of a very few that eliminated immunity for police officers. And so it would make sense. And just, you know, prosecutors literally scratch their name out of that bill. Not us. All governmental officials, law enforcement, but not us, even though they're peace officers. Okay. So it's time to put them back in, try and put them back in Colorado. So we actually work really hard and a lot of resources in thinking about common sense policy legislation that the legislators in Colorado should believe, and they did. We talked to many legislators, many Republican, Democrat. We did a poll in Colorado. 83% of Coloradans agree that prosecutors should be sued when they commit intentional, knowing, and reckless misconduct. Okay, and you know what? The legislators agreed that we talked to. You know who didn't agree? The prosecutors. Why would they want to get rid of their shield?
Exactly.
Right? Okay. So what did they do? What did they do? They bullied the legislators, and it worked. They do it all the time, by the way. They have so much power. I mean, they make the laws anyway, and they're in there behind them. They bullied the policymakers, and all the policymakers you know what? I can't go against my DA. I can't go against my DA. He's going to call me soft on crime.
Yeah.
They backed away. But let me tell you something. So we want to run a ballot measure because we know that the public is behind this, but it costs money. A lot of money to run a ballot measure.
Yeah.
Because you got to get signatures signed and you got to run a campaign. And so we're raising money. So they can help by helping fund this campaign. We're the real deal. We have an extremely educated, strong, and scholastic, researched, and high-level advisory board that is helping us curry this through. We have a staff that is incredible. We are not a shoestring organization that's trying to just kind of scream our way through this.
Yeah.
It's legitimate what we're doing, and we're on the ground and we're talking to people, and we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's how we need help.
Okay. So I will make sure that I include all of Protect Ethical Prosecutors organization information in our show notes, so that way people can check it out. But thank you so much, Iris, for joining us today. We are so appreciative of your time. We know you're super busy. But I think that wraps up our podcast today. So if you liked listening to the show, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We are on all platforms. Come back with a warrant.pod. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. And if you didn't like listening to us,
come back with a warrant.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I work at United Healthcare. When I think about United Healthcare's members, I think of my own family. My niece was diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic disorder. I know how hard it is for families. At United Healthcare, we can make it easier.
I'm Brian. I care because I know what it's like to not speak the language. It's not easy. Health insurance is complicated. I would say our job is to make everything easy for our UHC members. I work for United Healthcare. I'm committed to care.